Okay, so we'll start class today. I'm recording my lectures for a couple of folks that are taking the class at a distance. They're graduating and need to do that. So it will be available if you need it to go back through something. I'll try to figure this technology out. So far, it was working okay when I did some testing, and I now have access to InDesign. I'm so excited. So anyway, I'll kind of go back through a little bit. I think on my document camera will come up here in just a minute. I'll just review really quickly how to start a new document and such, and then we'll download. So I've got some files we can work with and such today. So now I need to start the document camera. See, there's a lot going on here. Got lots of windows. So let's go ahead and go back to my textbook, and it should auto zoom there. Okay, as far as just making a new document, this is review from last Thursday. Is everybody able to get into InDesign? So far, so good? Okay. So go ahead and get into InDesign, and we want to do a file and then new, and you'll find document. Whoops, if I can get back over there. And the new document window, there's a default size, there's custom, so it probably remembered what you had last time. The measurement is in picas, so we'll talk about the difference today, whether it's points, picas, inches. But there happens to be 6 picas per inch, so 6 times 8 is 48, plus another ½ inch is 3, so that's where we get 51p0, so it's 51 picas. Standard page is 8.5 by 11, so 11 times 6 is the 66. Orientations, you'll find portrait or landscape. Some folks refer it to as tall orientation or horizontal for either one, but portrait is the regular. You'll see facing pages, and you can normally uncheck facing pages, so your textbook is facing pages. We don't need facing pages. Let's do one page, and then if we were to start page numbering, we start at page 1. If you're working with someone, whether it's in your office or at a distance, you might be working on pages 1 through 25 and your partner 26 through 50. So you can vary the pages. As far as the column and the gutter, so columns is number of columns per page. The gutter is the space in between each column. So standard is 1p0. We'll leave that at 1. We can change these in other ways also. So standard margins for just kind of a default document are a ½ inch. And again, if there's 6 picas per inch, that would be 6p0 for 1 inch documents. For a ½ inch document, it would be 3p0 or ½ inch. There's this little chain link here. So if I wanted to change my bottom margin to 1 inch, but leave all the rest of them at this 3p0, I'd have to unlock the chain. So if I go to change any one of those and my little chain link is locked, then it's going to be 1 inch all the way around. So if I want to change my bottom to 6p0, you can do the up arrow forever, or you can just type in 6p0. Okay, and then if you click into another cell, it'll stay there. Bleed and slug, we talked about bleed the other day. Remember, your textbook is like that pink color, so anything that looks like color goes to the edge of the page. There's actually about an 1/8 inch of space that's the colors goes off your textbook or cover, whatever that you have color against, and then it's physically cut. So color bleeds off the page. Slug is the space, so with facing pages and such, it's the space, top, left, right, and bottom all the way around it. And with facing pages, then it would be the space in between your facing pages. So sometimes you may want some room for note taking or just, physical space outside. So I think we've got our document set. So we've got standard 8.5 by 11, tall orientation. We unchecked facing. It's a 1-page document. 1 column means no columns really, so it is just 1. We changed just the bottom margin to 1 inch 6P0 and left the bleed in the slug alone. And anything, of course, can be folded back together, so you probably know how to do that. And then go ahead and create. And we will get, just like we had the other day, looks a little bit different. So the pink and the purple lines are your margins. Note that your bottom margin is now 1 inch versus 1/2 inch. Couple other things that we talked about on Thursday. So on your left and your right, or the left side of your screen, your toolbox, I tend to like to have it in 2 columns as opposed to 1 longer column, but you can choose to look at it either way. Currently so does everybody have a control palette up? So you've got your file, edit, layout, all that good stuff. So you've got your menu.
I want to see the slide.
Oh, for Adobe? Okay, let me see. Hopefully that's good. Okay, and then you can go to File, Document, and then did you kind of remember what we went through? Do you mind? Oh, are you trying to get into?
I just reset my password.
Oh, okay. Oh. So basically we'll go there, got these on pages, we change the margins, yep, then moves it to 6P0. And create, I think you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
So we get these all to
Oh, okay, so unlink the. So that we now do them. There we go. And then you can change those. So that one's okay. You can do 3, 3, 3. And then you should be okay. Is everybody else kind of up to speed then?
I don't have that menu bar that's underneath the file edit layout.
Okay. So that is, I'll show you where that's located. If you go to Window, so if you don't see the bar that's under File, Edit, Layout, all that good stuff, and it may not display right away, go ahead and click Control and it should show up. Is that good to go? Okay. Anything else on question?
Yeah, I just came in a little after the return trouble and I have no margins now. What did you set those in?
And if you forgot or didn't set margins right away, you can always go back into Layout, and then you'll see margins and columns. And then when you get to margins and columns, I don't want to do that. Anyway, if you link them all, they're going to be the same, and I linked them all, so now mine are 3P0 all the way around. So if you unlink it, and then I want my bottom to be 6P0, so I can go in and change that. Again, column is 1, meaning it's 1, there's really not a column, and then we're okay with that, and it should give you that same margin again. Okay, and because I'm clicked on so there's the selection tool, the black pointer tool is kind of your normal one. The white one is a direct selection tool. We'll work a little bit with that today. But your normal black selection tool is the one that you pick for if you have a text frame or something like that and you need to click on it. And again, we'll get lots of practice with that. But that's the default selection. Also notice with the black selection tool, so go ahead and make sure you have that one selected. This is what's called a proxy And you see that the top left corner is where the dot is at, so that it's selected in that position. My XY coordinates are set from that dot. So it's kind of like your measurement point. If I were to change that to the middle proxy icon and I drew a box, whatever that middle part of that box is, that would be my XY coordinate for the box itself. So the default is typically top left for a box measure. So XY is my vertical, my horizontal, my width, my height, all that good stuff. So we'll draw some boxes here in just a minute and do some testing. We talked about at the bottom of the screen, so there's probably no errors right now because we have nothing in there, but remember on Thursday, we typed your name in there, made your name quite large, and it couldn't fit in the box, and there was a small plus sign. We'll see that again today. But that means there's more text that cannot be placed. The palettes are to the right, so clicking on, as you would with anything else, clicking on the palettes to change your views. We're currently in Essentials view, so we may change that as we go, but in general, that's the default view with us doing nothing. The ruler bar, by default, you should see that, and if you don't, if you go to View, and then hide rulers would hide them, show rulers, of course, would show them, but you should see both the horizontal and the vertical. Okay, as far as grids and guides, so if you land again, go to View, land on grids and guides. It's going to lock column guides, which is kind of nice because it's so easy to point on something and click and drag it around. And if you start dragging your column widths, then you may inadvertently make one larger than it should be, and it doesn't look very good. The other one is snap to guides, and we'll learn how to use guides here in just a minute, some ruler guides. But it's nice because whatever you create, if you want something to align at 2 inches and you set a guide at 2 inch, it's going to snap to that. It's not going to be just a hair less, so that visually, when you go to publish your piece or you print it, and it kind of looks like it's a little wave, so everything would be exactly the same and snapped up to that 2 inch mark. Smart guides are nice because if you have multiple elements, whether they're vertical or horizontal, you can align them. So even just by visual eye, it's going to show you that middle vertically, the middle horizontally. And again, we'll practice with some of these things. Extras, so frame edges are going to show. That's probably the most important thing right now, is that we are going to see whatever we type, we're going to have a frame around it and it will display. Okay, so the very first thing let's do, let's go to your T tool. And by the way, on the T tool, do you see a tiny little triangle to the lower right? So it's just a T. Okay, if I click hold on the T tool, there's 2 T tools. So there's a regular old type tool, or there's a type on a path tool. And you'd have to have some sort of a path to be able to type on the path. So we don't have anything like that on our screen at this point. So the type tool has the dot by it. That's the one that's default. So we'll go ahead and select that. And then you know how to change, Minion Pro is the default. So we'll use that one today. This is a very complete typeface with bold, various bolds. Regular is the default, italic, various italics, and 12-point size is again our default. Leading is always, unless we set it differently, a default of 20%. So if I were to multiply 12 times 20% or 12 times 1.2, I would get 14.4. And then the other thing that you'll notice there, see how the 14.4 is in parenthesis? That means that that's the default 20% leading. And if I change that to say 18-point leading, and we'll again practice with this later today, but the parenthesis goes away. So I'm not in a default leading situation right now. If I go back to auto, whatever my point size is, it's 20% more. Okay, so with our T tool, we'll just use regular old Minion Pro, and I want to click and drag a box, type your first and last name, just like we did the other day. So your first and last name. Okay, I can make that larger. So again, just like we did the other day, go ahead and highlight it and let's make it quite large, 48 points. So for me, my name is so large that now I've got the plus sign on the lower right-hand side. That tells me that the whole thing cannot be displayed. So for, again, the box size that I just drew. And I can change the point size, I can change the box size. There's all sorts of things that I can do. So if I go back to my regular old pointer tool, and I'll go through the box, I guess we'll go and describe the box right now. That top left, remember the top left proxy, so if you haven't clicked on your black pointer tool, go ahead and do that. And then you should get sizing handles and that whole deal. Okay, that top left right there, my X coordinate is 6P0, my Y coordinate is 6P36. If I were to pick that up and move it around, so my vertical Y now is a little shorter, and my X, I moved it slightly, so that's changed also. If I want to move that right to the edge, and I want to get it, you know, maybe right at 12P0, I can actually type that in. So my Y coordinate, 12P0. If your nums lock doesn't work, you know, the numbers on your keypad, you might have to use the numbers above your keyboard or the num lock, which actually I'm not even sure mine has a num lock. Anyway, if those don't work, you may have to resort to the numbers above your alpha. Anyway, so I can, you know, physically change my XY coordinates. I've got the width and the height of my box. They right now are at 100%. I can squish them down or make them larger. As far as the other boxes, so the larger second box on that left-hand side is big. That's your in port is what it's called. So if there's other type that's threaded from other pages, that's going to have probably a small blue triangle in it telling you there's more text somewhere. Okay, the next one, of course, is the sizing handle. If you put your cursor on it, you're going to see, you know, the left and right sizing. Same thing with the lower left, vertical and horizontal sizing handle. Same thing with the two up and down. And then you've got the blue, so it's an anchor basically. So if this were a typed caption or description of an image, I may want to link them together or anchor them together so that they roll along and don't become separated. So that is helpful for that. Of course, sizing handle, you've also got, you know, left to right. So I can bring my left to right sizing handle out and there's my whole thing is there, which means now that my out port, which used to have the red plus sign, now is clear. So everything is displaying. That's an open typeface, so the O means it's an open typeface. And again, if I add my middle name here, I probably have to expand the box, all that good stuff. Every frame, you can see here on the left-hand side, I'm on my tools. So every frame has a fill and a stroke. And currently, this frame that I created, my text frame, has no fill and no stroke. Does everybody find the fill and the stroke? Okay, so if I want to create stroke, and you have options for black, of course, right here, and filling for black and white. And by the way, you probably see a box, so right under your color fill and your color stroke, there's a box and a T. So not only does the frame have a fill and a stroke, but so does my type. So I can fill my type if I really want to. Let's go ahead and we'll just use black here. So if I want my stroke to be black, I have to make sure that that's forward. So you can either click the little swap thing or just type, click on your stroke tool and then that will come forward. So I can go ahead and click apply and you can probably barely see it, but there is black and you can click away from that. There is black around that box to really see what's going on. on again my box toolbox, I should say. The left is normal view, and then there's one more little preview guy, and again there's a triangle, so there's several preview modes, but I can click just the regular preview mode, the bleed mode, all that good stuff. Presentation mode gets you in where it's a whole black screen. But preview mode, I don't see all the borders and boxes and stuff, so it's kind of nice because I'm just looking at what my type is going to be, what it's going to print like. Okay, and you can go back to normal now. So then you can see where indeed you've got a box. So the other thing that you may notice, and I'm going to go ahead and if you want to do this, go ahead and do that too. Bring your box size a little bit larger. Okay, and right and left, we'll bring it larger. With looking at this box, can you tell what the defaults for type are as far as alignment? Where does my type sit inside that box? Way left and top. Yep. So that's the default. If I need to change that, then I need to have some tools to be able to do that. So if I wanted my name, you know, I could drag it around and I could try to get it so that it's in the middle. And in fact, we'll use, let's go ahead and make it approximately the size of your name, and you can leave it longer, that's okay. So again, with my black pointer tool, remember we have those, let's see if I can grab them here. Oh, there's one. Okay, remember there's some guides. There's guides to help me align. So if you kind of move your name around enough, and pretty soon you're going to get a vertical line. So I can kind of eyeball the center to try to center my name, and the snap to guides help me. And in fact, vertically, there's kind of something similar too. And if I'm really good, I can probably try to get both of them if I want to try to align, but it's aligning really the box. So it's not even doing a great job with that. So it's better than nothing that you have these tools to help, but probably the better way to go if I really wanted, and maybe I want to align this at a certain point, and we'll figure that out in a minute. But the other thing I can do is drag that edge to edge. So I'm dragging my box edge to edge. And in the type tools, so I can go back to my T tool, and you can see there's paragraph. So our screens are so big anymore that we're able to see both character and paragraph tools at the same time. So the A, if you kind of hold your mouse on that A, it's character formatting controls. If you hold your mouse on the P, it's paragraph formatting controls. And really the paragraph controls start about here. So there are more tools that would show up on, you know, the larger screen. In fact, there's even more tools. If you don't have enough, there's even more on a little drop down. I don't know if you saw where I clicked there, but it's 3 little lines that there's kind of a watch looking mechanism, and then the lines down below that. So that, and we will sometimes use that, but there's even more. So on our character formatting, if you roll over clear to about halfway over, you'll see align center. So you can go ahead and just click that. Oh, you might have to highlight your type first, and then align center, and then it goes. So go ahead and click, and you should be able to with your T tool, even if you just click inside it, because we're within a paragraph, it should automatically align for us. Okay. The other thing, so it's really top heavy there, you know, and I can click there and I can try to enter key. Well, my enter key, because I'm at 48 points, my enter key is huge. So that's not really a good option either, to try to either make enter keys above it or adjust them. It's really would be better if we had some sort of a vertical center option, and there is. So let's go again. This is a little bit further in the book, and I'm just kind of introducing a lot of tools here so that you get to play a little bit and figure out how this works. So let's go back to our selection tool again, the black pointer tool. Okay, so we have all of our sizing handles and such back. Okay, then go to your menu bar. Do you see Object? So go to Object, and then towards the middle, you might see Text Frame Options. And again, you have to have the box selected to get the text frame options. So if it's grayed out, you may have to go back, click your black pointer tool, select on the box. Okay, so text frame options, and if you want to move that box out of the way so you can see what's going on, you just can pick the box up and drag it out of the way. To see what we're doing, so the other thing is preview by default is turned off. I think once we start creating documents and we have preview on, I think it's going to remember what we do. But at this point, preview is off, so I could make all sorts of changes, and until I said okay, I don't know what I did. So make sure you turn preview on. Okay, so there's a number of different things we can do here. So I can add columns, which I'm not going to do, but a certain number of columns with gutter. I can actually designate the exact width if I want. Inset spacing, we're going to deal with that in just a minute. I could also use top inset spacing and just make it go up and up and up, and I can push that type down. So let's actually try that just to see how it works. So remember, there's the chain link. So if I do something now with the chain link lock, everything will be affected. So I want to unclick my chain. And then just little by little, so click on top there, and do you see how that's pushing down just a little bit? So I could actually use that to align within the box. And again, if I want to check things out, I can go back to that. I'd have to say okay to go back to my preview. But if you want to see, is that looking better? What do I want? You know, is it about in the center? All that good stuff. Let's bring that back to 0. So I just want to see, you can control the top visually if you want to. And there's something called reading position that actually aligns things in the middle slightly high. So some folks like to use that and visually align themselves with their own eye. But there is a handy dandy vertical justify. The default is top, and we can say center and then okay. So now we can turn our preview off, but when you turn your preview off, you still have to click outside that box. So even though I'm in the regular, you know, the preview mode, I still have to unselect the box. So that looks a little better as far as it's centered left to right. The box is going to be margin to margin, and then my type is in the middle too, vertically. So let's go back to normal view, and we can push that to the top. So again, it tries to help snap itself to those margins. So it will be at the top of our screen now. So your name is going to be large and in charge there. We went through document setup. So as far as I'll go back to my hover cam here. So we went through the document setup and, you know, file new, all that good stuff, page. And by the way, if you need to add pages, so we did one for our page, but if we've got more, then you can go to layout and then land on pages, and add page is going to add 1. Insert pages, I can insert 5 or 50, whatever. I just type a number in there. And you notice too, you can delete pages if you have too many, but really easy to add pages. Okay, getting to know the workspace. So back to my hover cam again. I think you know, the menu bar area, the control panel, the tools, our document window. Pre-flight panel is where errors might show up. Again, when we had that red plus sign, we did see last week there was an error. The pasteboard, so what the pasteboard is nice for, I'll go back to this. InDesign is a program that can collect all sorts of assets. I can collect type, I can collect images, I can collect vector files, maybe from Illustrator or something else, and I can put things I'm going to be using on my pasteboard. So they're actually outside the document margins, and then I can bring them in as I need them. But it's handy because they're saved with the file, so they're used with the file. They're linked probably to you know, another area on your hard drive, that would be the most efficient to link them. But then they're at your use when you need them, and it's a good way to remember you need to add particular elements. The panels, this is a little bit different view, but the panels are still at the right. Our workspace, we're in Essentials view right now, so that's the same. Again, things look slightly different. Pages are at the bottom, so when we add, we only have one page now, but when we start to add some pages, you'll see that. Again, with panels, remember I don't really move them around or dock them in other locations, because then that would be difficult for all of us to be able to find them and quickly click on things. We all want to be kind of in the same view. I think that's most handy. For ungrouping and all that good stuff. The tools, we'll go through the tools one by one for the most part. The rulers, so remember, I'll go back to InDesign here. We're displaying our rulers horizontally and vertically, and Thursday I think we went really quick through adding a ruler guide. So if I wanted to add one at 2 inches, I would be at 12P0. So what I want to do is and I have to have the pointer part of my arrow up in that ruler, and I click hold, you'll see a double-headed arrow here, and pull that down, and I can move it right to 12P0. So you see that line moving all the way across, and then I should see my y-coordinate as 12P0 also. So maybe I want to make that box 12P, to go, the line go to 12P0. So again, I can do that with my black pointer tool, my selection tool. I have to click back on the box to select it, and then I can go to my sizing handle and just click and pull that down. It'll snap to it, remember, because we've turned snap to on. And the type, you may not have noticed a whole lot with the type, but it actually is still centering it within that box. So however big your box is, it's going to center it within that box. So those are ruler guides. Smart guides, we kind of went through those briefly, and the defaults, again, for types, so there's lots of different defaults, but when you open a document, so Minion Pro is the default here. If I wanted it to be Arial from now forward, I'd have to close everything down, and before any document was open, change my type to Arial, 11 points, 15 point leading, whatever I want as my default, and then I can open a document, and then from then on that would be the default. So there's different ways for adding defaults, but easy to change. Okay, we went through as far as the visual clues, remember for, oh, gotta get the hover cam back. So the area at the bottom on page 13 again. So the only thing that we didn't do was live corners, but we'll do that just here shortly. So sizing handles and your in port, your out port, all that good stuff. Master pages, going back again to InDesign. If you click on pages, so you'll see that we did not set up a master page. I can have more than one master pages. If you click on your pages palette, I've got one page here, and there's a little tiny bit of information on it, but you see that there's a master. So if I wanted to set up confidential, textbook page 8, or page numbering, something like that, I could set that on the master page. Every single page that used a master, and I can name it something else if I want to, but that used a master, would have confidential across it, confidential everywhere. So it's a good way to format things quickly and consistently. And again, remember facing pages with our textbook, remember the left side had some master page elements that were different than the right side. So on my left pages, I'd want to make sure I applied left master, that's what I called it. Right one, apply right master again, or whatever I wanted to call it. So that's really kind of about it. The second section is designing with text, and we've done a lot of that really already. So I'm going to go back to my hover cam here. Text frames and formatting is chapter 2. There's a bunch of pages that are scanned on Moodle. Some of the scans are okay, some of them might be a little bit blurry, but they are from the textbook and then also our other design textbook. But again, I'll kind of rip through this. We've done a bunch just now. Okay, so getting used to points and picas, and we did a little bit today with picas. So there's 12 points equals 1 pica, 6 picas equals 1 inch, and 72 points equals 1 inch. So in Microsoft Word, and actually 1 inch, the type isn't just the letter. There's a little bit of space above a letter and a little bit of space below a letter. So even in like Microsoft Word, if you were to set something at 72 points and you put a measure on it, most likely that character is not going to be 1 inch. So because of that little bit above it and a little bit below it. So I don't know if that kind of helps with size at all, but for the most part, we're going to deal with picas, and it's a publishing term. Measurements are much more minute when you need to get precise, exact measurements of a collection of different types of objects, whether they're images, text, captions, different sizes of elements throughout the page. The ruler itself, so for the most part, we're going to leave this set at picas, but even if you land on edit on your InDesign screen, and you'll see preferences way at the bottom. Okay, so we'll kind of look at some of the preferences, but start with general. So edit preferences general. And I don't think there's much here that we need to worry about here. Interface. Go to type. So we're going to be using typographers quotes. They're the ones with the little kind of curly look to them. Type tool converts frames to text frames. Using correct optical size, triple click to select a line, so you can be on a line of type and click 3 times. That selects a line. Apply leading to entire paragraph is turned off. And leading, so we'll maybe have some errors caused by leading for an example, but sometimes you want letters to be larger, so you might have 12-point font for a whole paragraph, but maybe one word, for whatever reason, you want it to be 16 points. So it shouldn't adjust, and throw off leading and everything else. So that has to do with that. Adjust spacing automatically when cutting and pasting words. Enable in-menu font. Not much else there. Advanced type, so there's superscript, that's anything above a line. Subscript, H2O, where the 2 is low, for example. Caps are, small caps are 70% of the normal size. Let's see, so what I really want to go to is units and increments. So that's a couple down there. So our horizontal, we can change this. This is one place to change units of measure. So horizontal can be changed to points, vertical changed to points or inches, either way. Even your stroke can be adjusted away from points to something else. We will be adjusting these here in just a little bit. I think that's kind of the basic there. There's, spelling. So colors I can assign to spelling words. Autocorrect, so you can enable it. There's other dictionaries that you can add to your language and such. I can add my own misspellings. You want to be careful about that, like Microsoft Word too, so that you don't add something incorrectly. So that's kind of the basics there. Display performance, I think that's probably good there. We'll kind of see that later. Okay, so you can go ahead and cancel. We didn't make any changes there. The other way to change units of measure, if you move again with your pointer tool and I move up to my ruler and I can right mouse, I can move my rulers to display in inches if I really want to. That doesn't change everything, however, so I need to go back over and do the same thing if I want my vertical, but we're going to deal with picas. So we'll go back again. So I'd like both of your measures to be in picas. Okay, putting type on a page is the next thing, and that's on page 21. And basically, you grab your T tool, your type tool, and I can click and drag a box however large I want it, or just click and start typing. That's one way. And the frames itself, so remember we kind of looked at what the default frame looks like. So before you have your selection tool, remember it is just a straight line, but then once you go to click on your selection tool, then you've got the sizing handles and all of your other elements. The black selection tool treats the frame as an object. You've seen that. We will work with the direct selection tool after a little bit. We just went through this, so the frame edges themselves, we've got all the sizing handles to make the frame larger. My import, if it's open, tells me that this is the beginning of this type block. If it's got a small blue triangle, there's something somewhere else. This one, the bottom one is called the window shade because you can drag it up or down like a window shade, but the blue anchor, so that controls that anchored object. The live corners, again, we'll go through that, and then the out port, if there's a red plus sign, means that there's more. We will go through that as well. You can also, so if you're outside of a text frame, if I want to get inside this text frame, I can just simply usually double click. I think I probably had to click back on here, but I can double click the type, and if I really want to type my middle name, I can just type in that place and add my middle name. So double click helps easily. Back to my hover cam. So you know how to size a text frame. We've done a little bit of that with the corner. Bottom right corner can size right, which is larger or smaller, and down, larger, smaller. We will work with threaded text frames here right now. So since we're here, we'll do that. I'm going to go back to InDesign. And actually, let's go to Moodle. So it may take just a minute. Go ahead and log into Moodle if you're not already in Moodle. And then I want you to click on September 2 through September 8, and that will display content within there. And then you'll see a document called Long Article. Everybody get into Moodle? Okay, so go ahead and click on it. It's a Microsoft Word document called Long Article, and again, if you click on that, it should download, and depending upon the browser you're looking at, it may be at that top right corner with a little arrow that blinks down, or in Chrome, it's the bottom left side. So I can go ahead and click open on that. And we'll just take a look at it really quick. So go ahead and enable editing. And whether you're in 1, 2 pages, we're just kind of looking at it right now. So some things to notice. First of all, it's a multi-page document. So when you kind of scroll around, it fills up 3 full pages and then even a little bit goes into another page. It's in Times New Roman 12 point, and there are between each paragraph, so there isn't enter keys if you try to click. So see how you can't really click in between the enter keys. And actually, if you go to your P, paragraph, show hide paragraph, you'll see that there is only one enter key between the paragraphs. And in Microsoft Word, so we'll see how it imports in. In Microsoft Word, there's some paragraph tools that allow you to see what the settings are. And again, it's kind of that small arrow there. Click that. And the spacing before, so there's a way to think of paragraph spacing as before this paragraph, space X. Or, so in this case, it's 12 points before the paragraph, but not counting the first one. And then single space that, or you can have after paragraph spacing. So once you press the enter key, and this displays an example of what it's going to look like. So the spacing before has a larger amount. Okay, so we can cancel that. Let's go ahead and save this into your folder. So if we go to File, Save As, and I want to go to Browse, and we may want to, let's go to Documents. Let's create a folder, and you can just go to New Folder, and we'll call it Chapter 2 for right now. And you don't need spaces, just so we know where we're at. So Chapter 2. And the name, so move into Chapter 2. You'll probably have to double click to get into Chapter 2. And the name is fine. It's kind of a long name, but that's okay. And then save. Okay, so then go back to InDesign, and what we'll do is go back to your T tool, and we'll just go ahead and actually we'll stay right here. Okay. So this is actually, we'll go backwards, but in your textbook, so I'm going to go back quickly to my little hover cam here, and it should, there we go. Sometimes it takes a minute. So I am on page 29, which is the importing text, and we're going to see that there's different ways to import text, and of course you know that this is a long document. It's not going to fit on one page, okay? So there's a manual flow icon, so we're going to practice with that. And InDesign will just place what we want manually within the document itself. There's a semi-auto flow or semi-automatic text flow cursor, and that automatically loads up any overset page overset text on the page. If we hold our Shift key down, then it's going to go ahead and add the number of pages required to fit that text, whatever the content is. So we'll practice with those, and then we'll go back. So I know that we're back at the threaded text frame, so once we get these text frames in, then we'll go back and practice. So I'll go back to InDesign. So to get text, you know, of course, you can grab your T tool and you can type, okay? Another thing that I could do is grab my T tool, and you don't need to do this, but let's say I want to put all that text there, and by the way, I'm still center aligned. That's kind of in, there we go. So there's my center aligning. That's why the cursor is still there. But I've just created a box and it'll throw that text in that box. So that's one way to do that. I'm going to get rid of my box right now. So anyway, we'll practice with these other different mechanisms to import text. And that's really the strength of this program, is that you probably have type in all sorts of different areas and different formats. So you might have some Microsoft Word type. You might have some actual .txt like from Notepad. You might have Excel spreadsheet workbooks that you have to bring in. Lots of different image types of formats that you can bring in. So this is a collection. True desktop publishers, digital publishers bring together all sorts of different types of files. Okay, so click on File, and you'll see Place with dots after it. So File, Place. Does everybody find that? Okay, so click on that. And what we're going to get is most likely this PC in your documents. And just so that you can see the different varieties of files, there's a little box that says importable files. And I can insert animated package and InDesign snippet. Snippets are little recorded sets. InDesign, so another InDesign type of file. CS3 type of document, in copy, media files, Word version, Excel. RTF is a rich text format, so it's kind of like text, but there's tabs and paragraphs and kind of some basic formatting, not a lot. Regular Word, Excel, text, InDesign tagged text, kind of like some HTML, encapsulated PostScript, Macintosh picked format, Windows Metafile, PDFs, portable document formats, and then images. It's not even really showing us the various kinds of images, but lots of different image types. So we don't need to select the file right now because we'll be able to see the display of it. But it's going to be in Chapter 2, so double click your chapter, and it should display. It's showing, you know, that long bike. And we'll go back in to show import options, replace selected item. That's the default. I don't have anything selected, so it's not going to replace anything. Create static caption. So we'll just leave everything basically as default right now. And then click Open. Oh, do I have to close it? I guess I do. So close it. Go back, File, Place, so close your long bike article. Back to Place, and again, we'll find that long bike article again, and then Open. And then don't do anything yet. So what we have now is the manual place icon, and I can do a couple of different things. So if I wanted to create, you know, maybe I know that I've got a sidebar here, I can make it as big as I want it. Okay, I can also press, let's see, I can do edit, undo, place. So if you did that, edit, undo, place, you should still have your little manual placement icon back. If I just kind of move to that left edge and click, it's going to start wherever my mouse was vertically, and it's going to make it go to the edge of the margin and fill the page down. Okay, and let's see if I can. Nope, it's not going to do that. Okay, so I can also click and drag a piece. I can go back into layout, and later, after the fact, we're going to undo some of this for a while here, but wherever I'm at here, margins and columns, maybe I want to make my columns 2, and then OK to that. So my columns are there, but I didn't put the text in when I had columns. I can move it back in and fit. And then now I've got, you know, placement that I need to fill back in. Did you all put columns there? go ahead and so let's undo all the way back until we have our placement icon. Go into layout, margins and columns, and we'll practice with that. And go ahead and put a 2, and then OK to that. So we haven't placed anything yet. So because it should see columns when we move our cursor, and again, where your cursor is vertically does matter. We can always adjust it later, not a big deal. But vertically, it is an issue. So it now sees the column rather than the whole page. It sees the column as my first manual placement. And then I've got to go back. So now I can click on that little red plus sign and I load it back up again manually. And then I can try to come back. My mouse is kind of like all over the place. Is yours? It's strange. Anyway, I kind of want to be careful on my vertical. I can click, and again, it manually fills only this page in. Okay, so let's, we're going to delete these. So go ahead and click on the right. Oh, and by the way, just so you see what that looks like. So if I click on the right column, I should have that in port. Remember my in port? There's a small right-facing blue triangle. That tells me there's text coming in. If I click on the left side and I look at my out port, it's not a red plus sign because text is flowing to wherever it's supposed to go to. So it tells me there's a little right-facing triangle. Okay, I can get rid of these text blocks just by clicking on them, press delete key, click on it, press delete key, goes away. Okay, so we'll try another way. Let's go to File, and again, same thing to Place. And we're at the same long bike, same thing. Okay, so we'll click on that, click Open. So this time, we're back again. This is the same old manual place icon. This time, hold down your Shift key, and don't do anything yet, but do you see kind of a dotted curly arrow in front of it? Okay. So keep that, Alt key kept down, and then move your cursor vertically, you know, left and right where you want it, kind of underneath your name and such. Click, and if you click and release, what happens is it keeps itself loaded. So it doesn't automatically fill that first page, and I still have my hand on my Alt key, but it reloads it for me so that I don't have to go down and click the little red plus sign. And then again, I can find where I want to click, and it keeps reloading it until I'm done. But I'd have to add pages here, obviously, because I don't have enough. Okay, so that's kind of how the Alt key functions. So again, if you escape key, so on your keyboard, way top left is the escape key. That cancels that semi-auto flow. And let's get rid of this again. So they're all gone. So the last one, if we go back to File, Place again, our long bike, and we press Open, this time hold down the Shift key and you should see a fully solid arrow, okay? So again, move kind of carefully to where you think it should be. Click, and if you actually release kind of everything, it automatically fills in this page, but then also notice if you click the drop down, so way down at the bottom left is our pages. Remember where the errors were the other day? We saw those. So left of that, you'll find the number of pages. So there's 4 pages automatically added. By the way, it went over the top of my name, so it didn't know better. And then I can also scroll down, same thing. Now my columns, so all those pages that got added, so it didn't add that format, it added pages. Okay, so I didn't set up my document to be within columns. So anyway, added all that. So with this first page, we kind of have a little issue there. That doesn't look very good. And notice where it ends. So for me, yours might be a little bit different, but it actually is a decent place to end because a worn leather shoulder bag, period. And then if I go down to check the rest of it, so it looks like a new paragraph might be starting. So that's a good thing, not a bad ending there. But as soon as I change this, so if I want to make it align with when I asked Alexis, director of, so I'm going to come to that second column and remember the top window shade, just kind of roll that down. And I should get on your screen, you should see that it's kind of trying to snap with that. So that should be good. And then I'm going to check line endings or paragraph endings and make sure. So there's something called widows and orphans, and you never want to leave so one is left behind and one begins life on its own. So I think the widow is left behind and the orphan begins life on their own. And one, so like one line all by itself, I'll just give you an example of what that looks like. So that's one tiny little line of a large paragraph. That's not an appropriate format. So if I were to try to kind of align the two there, I might actually look at getting, you know, those semi-aligned, and I still have enough transferring over to page 2 that it's enough of a paragraph that it doesn't look funny. That makes sense. Widows and orphans, I don't know if you've ever heard of those before, but that's just a proofreading thing. Normally you don't want to proofread for widows and orphans till probably you're about done with the document, because everything you do, if you decide to change margins, to shrink things up, you've just moved everything around. So it's usually one of the last things that I proofread for. So in any of these, and again with page 2, I've got one solid black looking. Would you want to read that page? For God's sakes, no. How come? What color is it? Black and white, but it comes across as great. There's no color. There's nothing to attract your eye. There's nothing visual. It's not even organized. It's organized into paragraphs, but how do I even know what all that says? I mean, what's it about? So that's kind of a problem. That's a publishing type of concept we'll go through as we progress through the class. But anyway, it's not very enticing in any way, shape, or form. So for any of these, again, there's quite a bit that's ending up on, you know, page 4, but maybe I know that there's a picture coming in page 3 or something that takes up a large portion of the bottom. So on page 3, so notice that in my example anyway, I've got one line. The best part of the experience here, so that's not good anyway. But if I've got other problems where I know that there's a really big banner that goes across, maybe it's an advertisement for another company that's sponsoring bikes, is at the bottom, so I can move that window shade up and automatically everything is rethreaded. Okay, so that's the good part about this program, is it remembers they can become unthreaded, but if you don't forcibly unthread them, they all stay threaded. I can even, so I'm on page 4 here, I can even click on page 4, delete it, and it really didn't go away. So back at page 3, it's now telling me, you got more here. So I can click on the box so that I can click the red plus sign. And then I need to go, again, click on my red plus sign, and I might want to manually thread it. Maybe I want to make sort of a column-y kind of a look, and it was enough. So again, yours might be slightly different, but I can place it wherever and however I want. It's a little bit smoother if you create columns and you make the software do it, but you don't have to. Okay. So does that kind of make sense? Threaded text frames, and they all thread to one another. They really don't delete. They stay connected unless you work to unconnect them. And there's examples. Again, I'll go back to my little hover cam here. We've done a lot of the examples here of moving things around and threading them. The blue triangles are important because they tell you that information is either ahead of it or following. You can break a thread by clicking on the selection tool and then hitting backspace or delete. Oh, that deletes them. Breaking the thread actually here. Double click on the blue triangle on the out port and then it breaks it. Importing, we've gone through the import function. Formatting text, that's all I think probably the same thing you've been doing for most of your life. Clicking in, so again with any, if I'm on my black pointer tool, I can double click, which gets me into the frame. Triple click selects align. Oops, 4 times. Selects the paragraph. 5 selects the whole article. Okay, so if I wanted to, 4 times format paragraph 1. Oh, and by the way, remember it came in Times New Roman? Remember we went and looked at that? So Minion Pro was our default, but it remembered the Times New Roman 12 point. The other thing it remembered, so remember there, I still can't get to the space in between there. And if we go on our, if you're on a character anywhere, you're going to see the character controls. And if you look way to the right, you're going to see an arrow with kind of a box. That's your spacing before, and it was set to 12p0, 12 points basically. So that's why that spacing is larger. But to format, if we wanted to change the first paragraph to, you can get rid of that. I don't know. No, they've added a lot. Papyrus. Sometimes easy to read, sometimes not. But if we wanted to change that, you can. The other thing that we can do is adjust the spacing before. And I could highlight the other, and I can Control A to select the whole document. Remember how in Microsoft Word you can do the same thing? Control A. Okay, so I can do the same thing here. Maybe I think that's just a little bit too big. So I can use my down arrow. Do you need to leave early to go to the mountain campus? Okay, and we're not going to do an assignment today, but we will on Thursday. Okay. So you can just shrink that ever so slightly, maybe to 0p8, and then click outside of it, see if you like it. So again, with Control A, we changed all of the spacing before, so the spacing between the paragraphs. There's lots of fun. I mean, again, the fonts are wide and varied. We'll have practice with those as we go. Point size, you're familiar with that. Leading, we'll practice with that. And we can practice with that now, I guess. So go ahead and let's just try a couple of paragraphs. So click any paragraph anywhere. So make that just that paragraph selected. Okay, and we can practice with negative, what's called negative leading. So if I've got a 12-point font, I can choose 9 points, which is, I can squish it, I can make it fit, but is that very legible and readable? No. So there are instances where negative leading is really good. That's not one of them, okay? Let's go to the next one. Whoops. Select that one. And maybe just, a little bit more. So there is 15 is not an option, nor is 16. But that doesn't mean that I can't type it in. So I can go to that box and maybe I think 15. I just need to widen it just a tiny bit. and maybe 15 is perfect. It still fits, you know, if you have a certain number of pages you have to fill, that might be exactly right. So leading is again something that you'll practice with, and we'll look more at the format for paragraphs and such, adding a stroke and fill to a text frame. So probably the best one to do that with is your name. And let's see here. Yeah, so if you go to your black pointer tool, and we'll be done here in just a half a sec. So black pointer tool, click just where your name is at. And about in the middle, remember we did add a stroke and we added a point stroke. So point was the default. I can make that bigger by just clicking where it says 1 point, maybe make it 5, so that's pretty big. The other thing I can do is add a color inside. So that's my fill, and that's to the left. So there's the stroke part and then the fill part. Defaults are going to be CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And you're also going to find defaults for RGB, which is red, green, blue. So CMYK is publishing 4-color process. Red, green, blue is your monitor colors. And then there's tints. If I think yellow is too strong, I can make it 31% of yellow. So that's adding stroke and fill, and we'll practice with that some more too. Okay, I think let's stop here and save your file. We'll just do a couple of things. I'm not going to collect this one. So go ahead and do a file save as, and I'm going to have you put it in your chapter 2. So double click your chapter 2, and let's just call it chapter 2 practice. Chapter 2 practice, and save. And then we'll call this up next time. There's just another couple of things. Thursday will be an assignment. So at the end of this chapter, and I do have copies, so the scan is on. If you don't have your book, I've got the scan that's on Moodle, so you'll be okay if you don't have your book with you. But we'll work on that almost all of Thursday. Okay, so we'll have an assignment. So I will stop today.